Table for One, Episode 30, Children's Games with Matt Leacock. Hey guys, very special announcement, just real quick before we jump into the episode. Has some really cool stuff today. Got Matt Leacock on. We're going to talk about children's games and a couple of those other games that you all know so well. But before that, I just wanted to give you all a little bit of information about a change coming up real soon for Table for One. So, as you might have noticed in the last few weeks, we've been talking about not just solo games, but family games, and really the whole idea of gaming anytime, anywhere, with apps at home by yourself, all the things that go with gaming, all that stuff. And to reflect that, we want it to be as inclusive as possible. So we're actually going to be updating the name of the podcast here in about 2 weeks to Every Night is Game Night. Now, it's not going to affect anybody out there who subscribes, so don't worry, you're not going to lose your podcast feed. It's going to be the same feed, but what you're going to see is a different name and a different logo. It's going to pop up in your podcast player, so don't freak out. We're not subscribing you to new things. It's the same podcast you've been listening to for the last 6 months, but we're going to be talking about a lot of different types of things, a lot of the different elements of just gaming and, more than just the big, meaty game that's the top of the hotness hitting the table with your game group. Talk about gaming at home, gaming with the family, gaming with kids, gaming by yourself, of course, being the top thing there. We're both strong solo gamers. That's going to be a huge element in the show. But I just want to let you know, we're going to remind you again next week, and then we'll make the switch over. This has been a fantastic experience thus far, has grown far more than I even expected, just kind of starting it on a lark. It's something fun to do to talk about solo games. And we have some really cool, exciting things in store for you. So thanks for being on board, and we look forward to the next 30 episodes as Every Night is Game Night. But for now, let's get on with the show in episode 30 of Table for One. Hey everybody, welcome back to Table for One. This is episode 30. This is Anthony, once again with Jason.
Yo, my peoples, what's up?
We are very, very excited this week, guys. We have a very special guest on, Matt Leacock. Matt, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, Matt does not need any introduction, because when you say Matt Leacock, you think of a certain game that has, in its many iterations, taken the gaming world by storm. But sorry, guys, we're actually not going to talk about that particular game, at least for the vast majority of the podcast. We thought it would be fun to instead pick Matt's brain about a very different realm of games that we usually talk about. So apologies to people who don't ordinarily have kids games in their orbit, but we do think that Matt's new design, Mo Rats in Space, is a worthy addition to anybody's game collection, and we wanted to have him on to talk about it. So welcome, Matt.
Hey, thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
As a kids game designer. So actually, that brings up another point. Aside from that game that you design, you do have these very kind of oddball games that you in your collection. So I'm thinking there's Mo Rats in Space, which I'm going to talk about today. Last year was Nitwit. So do you enjoy faking people out?
Well, I've always enjoyed making all sorts of games. I just kind of became known for cooperative games, but I've been doing race games, and I even did some light war games when I was a kid. So my tastes are pretty wide.
Light war games. Whoa, what's that? Oh,
well, I think I played War of the Ring as a kid and really wanted to try my hand at a fantasy war game. It was terrible, but I enjoyed designing it anyway.
So then this is like I think I read before, like either designer diary or a blog post, that this is kind of a palate cleanser for you. Like you get into designing either big games or like a huge development cycle, and then this is nice to kind of change it up a little bit. So is that kind of how you approach it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's a good number of factors that led to Mo Rats in Space, but I really enjoyed working on it, for one, just because it was light and bubbly as opposed to, a 14-month plus another, 6 to 9 months production on like a Pandemic Legacy game. Those things are really intense and really heavy. Yeah, they require a lot of long-term effort. And Mo Rats in Space, everything's so contained in the game, and the audience is working on a totally different level. So it was a nice change of pace for me.
So let's get into it. Let's talk about the game. So for just maybe introduce the game for people who don't know, my style of introducing it is that it's Forbidden Island meets Shoots and Ladders with a little dash of sorry. So
I don't know about the sorry element. I typically say it's a perfect introduction to co-op gaming for kids 6 or 7 to 12 and up. God forbid you're an adult and has to play Snakes and Ladders, because there's no decisions. This game you can play and really enjoy it when you're playing along with your kids, because there are interesting decisions to be had. And like a lot of the other co-op games I've got, there's lots of different ways you can die, but only one way to win, and that's for everybody to escape the space station.
So tell us a little bit about the game.
Yeah. So it's for 2 to 4 players, although I solo tested it quite a bit when I was playing it. It makes for an interesting solo puzzle. And the object is to get to the escape pod in the center of the space station, and you're a team of mole rats. And interestingly enough, mole rats are one of the only eusocial mammals, meaning they kind of live together in a colony and all work together, kind of like a colony of ants, but they're mammals. And so they're these cute little guys that need to run to the escape pod before the snakes get them. So the snakes are slithering around. They've infiltrated the station, and they're trying to bite the mole rats and gobble them up, basically. So on your turn, you play a card, and it moves your mole rat to the left or to the right, typically. And then it moves some snakes, either one or multiple snakes, around the space station. And so you need to kind of look ahead to what the other players are going to be doing on their turns and coordinate so that you can land on ladders of opportunity without landing on, say, snakes, or landing on chutes that will blow you out into the horrible black void of space. Well, you'll die of asphyxiation.
The worst way to die.
Yeah, that's
Eric
pretty
Martin.
bad. Yeah, well, he got that because he was testing it actually at Board Game Geek, and we were really riffing on the whole asphyxiation threat. But yeah, so it's a very simple game. Basically, you play your card and make a quick decision, and try to get out of the space station as fast as possible. But it gets more and more tense as the game progresses, because some of the cards spawn new snakes. So the number of snakes in the game continues to escalate. And they have a tendency to move toward the center of the space station as well. So they're moving up the ladders and trying to get you. So over the course of play, you have to grab the equipment scattered about the space station and all meet up in the escape pod before anybody's bit. That's pretty much how it operates.
So then, I guess looking under the hood of this game a little bit, when you were designing it, how do you approach design for a kid's game? Is it one of those things where you have to do a little bit of like a pre-child development research, like I want this age and they're capable of this, or is it more of like I'm going to design a game and I'm going to play test it a whole bunch with a lot of kids and see
it was more of the latter. Yeah, I don't have a background in child development, but I did do a lot of observations. So basically, I tried to come up with a rule set that was pretty easy to understand and come up with components that explained how they operated, more or less. I mean, when you land on a ladder, you kind of know you go up, and you land on a chute, or in this case, an air vent, it looks like you go down. We made really obvious. The artwork really kind of explains how you set up the game. I watched a lot of kids set it up without actually looking at the rules at all. So you just do pattern matching. And then I tried to make sure that the decision space was manageable, and that you weren't looking at this huge sea of choices, but still had enough depth. So there's look ahead in the game, and there's more depending on the number of players. So it's interesting in that it kind of naturally scales. If it's just 2 of you, you're only looking ahead 1 card, but there's only 2 people kind of conversing. When there's 4 of you playing, there's 4 cards out on the table, and there's a lot more opportunity to kind of discuss what's happening and evaluate all the choices. And you can see these gangs of kids really getting into it and talking about all the different options, and it's really, really fun to watch. Mm-hmm. So most of it was basically just getting the game on the table with the target audience and sitting back and observing and seeing what kind of see what clicked and seeing what their expectations for play were. And in some cases, I had to modify or I took the opportunity to modify the game so it matched their expectations.
There's so I'm a therapist. I work with young kids in a therapy situation, and so I play a lot of games with them, and I have played Mole Rats in Space with them. So Sometimes a kid is really good for some really honest, brutal, in-your-face feedback, like this game sucks, or I hate this, as opposed to like playtesting with an adult where it's like, well, change this, and then, they kind of, they try to be nice about it, but a kid will just hit you right in the face with it. Did you get any kind of that brutal, honest feedback where it's like,
oh my God, yeah. I was smiling as you're saying that because my kids are like that for sure. My youngest Anna will just tell me the brutal truth. She will not sugarcoat it, and there's no convincing or otherwise. I'll get it straight from her, and I also see that in kids as well. They'll be playing and they'll be like, "This doesn't make sense," or "I don't get it," or "Why are they doing this?" So, the filter's kind of off. They haven't developed to the point where they're couching things.
And they're nice.
Yeah, and I also do blind testing, so I'll have parents play with their kids sometimes, or even kids just play with each other, and then have the parents set up a camera on their phone, upload the video, and then send me a private link, and I'll observe them playing. And because I'm not in the room, I get objective feedback that way.
Any particular funny stories that stick out?
There's one where I mailed it out to a former colleague of mine who's a design researcher and watched her struggle as she played it with her son. I could not figure out why they were having all these problems. I'm like, thinking to myself, did you even look at the rules? But they made a good show of it. They tried to play and they got pretty far. There's a couple things they screwed up, but then I realized later that I had only sent the first page of the rules. I completely forgot. I don't know if it came out the print wrong, but I learned a lot there. Like what was obvious without playing the rules, because a lot of people, just open up and you hear that. Oh, I don't care. Let's just play. Let's just play, right? And I could kind of see what would happen if people did that. If they hadn't read the rules, what was intuitive and what wasn't. So that was was really funny to find out later. Oh, that's why you're.
It's like a new definition of blind playtesting.
Yeah, completely blind.
How intuitive is this game?
Rob Davio actually does that exercise. Occasionally he teaches a game design course, and he just puts a game out on the table without the rule book and says, well, try to figure it out, what's working and what's not. And it's a great way to kind of see what affordances the games have baked into them, that reduce the amount of lookup you need to do in a set of rules.
So is there anything else you wanted to say about Mallrats?
Let's see. So I had a lot of fun designing it. I designed it with Peaceable Kingdom this time. They're a local game shop, or not a game publisher, I should say, not a game shop, publisher. And all they do is co-op games for kids. So they've been chasing me to come up with a game for them for a number of years. And it was really fun to work with them. They're just out of Berkeley, California. So we'll see how it does.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. So our community, we play with solo gamers. So this just seemed like something that obviously we love our heavier and more involved strategic games, but a lot of us have kids too. So this would be a nice thing to kind of put on the table, and then if the kid doesn't like it, they wander off. You could just like, okay, well, I'll just play this for myself.
Actually, I should mention the game comes with a little challenge envelope. So after you've won the game 3 times, you're encouraged to check off your wins on this envelope. And when you've won 3 games, you open up the envelope and it presents another challenging game. And that game is pretty challenging. I think it'll challenge a lot of adults. So I won't spoil what's in the envelope, but it does make for a pretty intriguing little solitaire puzzle or a group puzzle game to try out with folks. That definitely will engage a lot of people who are not kids as well.
You thought the snakes were moving fast before. Okay, so I wanted to let's transition now. So Matt has been good enough to prepare a list of kids games that he really likes, and we've done the same as well. So we're going to present our top 3. We're going to try to keep this at a manageable time frame. So we're just going to run through them. Maybe you guys will get some ideas about what kids games are out there, what to buy, all that kind of thing. And then we're going to do it Dice Tower style. So we haven't shared the list beforehand, so we're going to surprise each other with our picks. So Matt, you are esteemed guest. Number 3.
Number 3. So I'm going to put a shout out for Animal Upon Animal, or Tier auf Tier, which is a dexterity game by Haba, where you're stacking animals, little wooden animals on top of other wooden animals in an attempt to get rid of all your animals before the other people.
Yeah, and that game is cool because it has a little dice mechanism, so it's not just like picking random animals. You kind of roll, and now you put the animal on there, and you get to pay for it if you knock it over, or you put two animals and all that stuff. So they turn what is a very simple stacking, basically Jenga, but they make it cute and they make it a game. So I really like that's a really good choice.
Yeah, the bits are really attractive, and my kids really love that game. So.
Yeah. I'll hop in here too because it was actually also my number 3. It was one of the first ones, the first Hobbit game I got for my son, who's now almost 6. And the reason I like it so much is it's fun to play with him, but also now they have the My Very First Game version, which is the big, huge, massive pieces, which my 2-year-old really likes to play with too. So it's this whole line now with all these different options and expansion options. So it's the base game obviously is great introduction for kids, and it's funny now that he's almost 6. He can actually start to beat me occasionally because I'm not good at dexterity games at all. But it's then we can pull out the bigger version and involve the 2-year-old, so she's not just running around with the little crocodile.
Actually, speaking of 2-year-olds, my pick is also a Hobbit game, but it's actually My Very First Games line. So this comes out of that. That's a line that is for ages 2+, which I have a 2-year-old right now, and I could just attest to this. They're really good. They have all the games in that line tend to have like a really legit toy factor. So your 2-year-old isn't really playing games. Like, they're just kind of messing with the pieces, but they make it worthwhile to mess with the pieces because of these big, chunky, colorful wooden things. And they're dirt simple, but they're fun. So when I wanted to identify, the one a lot of people know is First Orchard. Mm-hmm. I always call it First Orchid. That's completely wrong. It's First Orchard. But there's another one called Flower Fairy. I think in German it's Blumenvieh. And it's basically the same thing. It's roll and move, or basically roll and move. So you roll a dice, and either this little fairy moves towards the flower bed and you lose, or you roll a good piece and you put a flower piece, which are these chunky wooden things, and you stack them up. It's basically the same game as Forest Orchard, but you're stacking, and just that little wrinkle makes a big difference, especially at that developmental age. So thumbs up to that particular line of games. I think they rotate the dice tower tops. So Anthony, give us your number 2.
All right. So this is one that we came across here the last year or so. It's Ravensburger's Labyrinth. So we picked this up for my son, and we've been playing it a lot, actually. It's one of kind of jumped to the top as one of our favorites. Not only because it has a bit of, there's a lot of problem solving and mapping, and he has to think kind of further out. So it's a bit challenging, not just for him, but for us as adults, which is always a fun part of a game. But there's different ways you can ramp up the difficulty a little bit. You can have more things you have to try to get, or less things you have to try to get, or work with 2 of the different characters or instead of 1, or whatever you want to do. And it's been really fun for us to play through. And if you haven't played it before, it's basically you have this big grid with a handful of permanent spots and then tiles that kind of slide into various rows and columns. And on your turn, you'll slide one tile into one of those rows and columns and move everything over. And each tile has different paths on it. So you're trying to connect paths so you can move your character down it to find these different items that you have cards for. And that's basically it. But it's, the challenge of it. And my son's actually gotten to the point now where he can start moving it intentionally to block us from getting anywhere, which he finds hilarious. So that's fun too. As long as he stays nice, it's pretty fun.
My number 2 is Chicken Cha Cha Cha, I think by Zoc. Which is a memory game that I play with my daughters, and they crush me every time. I think because I just don't have any memory capacity anymore, and they're at the point where they can really wrap their head around these things quickly. But basically, in Chicken Cha Cha Cha, you need to memorize different tiles in order to move forward. And as you move forward, you jump over your opposing chickens and steal their tail feathers. And it can make for a very exciting end game where chickens are jumping over other chickens and stealing their tail feathers, screwing up, and then other chickens get ahead. So we had a lot of fun with this one with my daughters. It's got a nice toy factor too. They're wooden chickens with little wooden tail feathers that you pull out.
Cool. Yeah, so my number 2 is actually you mentioned Peaceable Kingdom. This is the part where I wanted to reserve a little bit of pub for them. They're a really, really cool company. Matt mentioned that they make a lot of kids cooperative games. I've used a lot of them in my therapy. Don't want to mention like too many of them, but Hoot Owl Hoot and Race for the Treasure have been very successful for me. But the one I picked for this list is called Cauldron Quest. So Cauldron Quest is a big, giant, colorful board, concentric. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get these ingredients and you're trying to move them towards the middle. And the middle is this cauldron, right? So you're just trying to put ingredients into the cauldron. And a wizard is trying to stop you. So there's like this hat that goes around the circle and it could block you. And so you're trying to get these ingredients, or the right ingredients like Eye of Newt and whatever witchy ingredients, into the center. But this game is, the reason I like it is it's roll and move. Roll and move is bad, right? As a designer, roll and move is bad.
There are better mechanisms, yeah.
Yeah, but I think what I do appreciate about roll and move is that kids seem to like really gravitate towards it. Like even when I'm doing a game that's not roll and move, say a game like Flashpoint Fire Rescue, they roll and then they have that instinct to move. So what Cauldron Quest does, it's a roll and move game. So like you roll, and if you get the certain number, you can move your piece. But it gives you decisions on which piece you can move, and sometimes you can not move but cast a spell. It takes what's a very kind of, derided mechanism, but does something interesting with it, and it does it in a way that's still accessible to kids, and there's a big toy factor and a big color to the thing as well. The designers did a really good job on this. Peaceable Kingdom generally does a really good job with their game line, so I definitely wanted to give some highlights to them. So there you go.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's get to our number ones.
My number 1 kids game would probably be Dancing Eggs by Haba. I don't know if you know this one. I mean, it really. I don't know if you guys know Dancing Eggs. I mean, this is what a kids game should be. I mean, it's physical. Everybody's really engaged in it. Basically, in this game, I'm trying to remember the object. It's to have the most eggs. So the game ships with 10 eggs in an egg carton. I think the newer boxes are actually like egg carton proportion, but I got an old classic one that came in an actual egg carton. And the eggs are made out of rubber, and there's one wooden egg. And on your turn, you roll a die, and you have to do what the die says. Everybody either has to cluck like a chicken, or run around the table, or say cock-a-doodle-doo, or grab an egg, or there's a variety of different things. But it's silly, goofy fun, and everybody loves it who plays it, kids especially. So I just love it because it's what a kids game should be. It's nice, goofy fun.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely interesting hearing your perspective on what a kid's game should be, and it's that one.
I just love the pure play involved in that. So yeah.
I use it in therapy. So I mean, especially with a kid and a parent. So I'm trying to get a kid to be, because it's really great at like kids that are super shy, socially avoidant, whatever it is. They can always like get a chunky dice in their hand. The dice are nice and big and chunky. So you roll it, and it has this little, first of all, you get them to do whatever it is, cluck a chicken or run around the table. But then it has the second dice, the one that tells you where to put the egg. The pictures are hilarious. Like the pictures are like, this person with an egg in their armpit, or an egg between their legs, and so at the end of the session, the kid is walking around with 5 eggs just hanging off of their body. It's a riot. I love that game. I'm so glad you picked it as your number 1. That's great.
Totally.
So Anthony, I'll put you in the cleanup spot, and I'll go with mine. You'll be our grand finale.
Okay.
So my game, there's so many games I could have put here. I won't kind of litter the channel with honorable mentions, even though there's so many. But King of Tokyo is the preeminent game. I mean, everybody I try this game with loves it. Not a soloable game, but who cares? I think people know what it is by now. It's monsters, it's dice, it's Yahtzee mechanic, it's attacking each other, it's powering up like a Pokemon. it combines so many things that kids love. The Pokemon aspect of the monster growing, the visual, those dice are also nice and big too, so the kids have a full 2 hands of 6 dice, and they're just chucking them. You're attacking each other, kids attacking mom, and all this other crazy stuff. And then they can it grabs them on a visual level too. I've yet to see the kid, male, female, or whatever, lots of different ages. I've played this with as young as 4 or 5, and I'll go up to 70. The young at heart. Everyone loves this game. King of Tokyo is my number 1.
A good game. A good one. I almost put that on my list too. It's a big favorite around here. On my end, I was looking at several different dexterity type games, kind of the favorite around here at the moment anyways. So Lupin Louie / Chewy, it's pretty hot right now. But the one that we like the most and that gets the biggest ovations and the loudest yells around the house at the moment is Rhino Hero.
Yes. Oh, sure. Yeah.
This is the one that gets my son standing on the chair, and my wife comes in the room. She's like, "What are you doing?" Cards flying across the room. And then when I showed him the picture of the new version coming out with the bigger cards and the multiple buildings, he was like, "When can we get this?" It's so much fun, and just kind of talking back and forth about where's this rhino, who's gonna get the rhino, and you made me put the rhino, it's gonna be so hard. There's nothing, it's super simple to learn, obviously, just stacking cards, but just adding that little element and the character to it, that's a lot of fun.
I was just saying I enjoyed that one as well. I played it first at a convention, I think in an oversized version, and really got into it.
Oh, there's oversized Rhino Hero?
I think at a convention there was an oversized version, so it really draws you in.
I'm in.
Yeah.
So, and so that was definitely a nice chunk of time with Matt Leacock without mentioning that game. But for listeners who know, Pandemic is my favorite game, so I cannot let Matt go off the call without asking at least one question. And you don't have to say too many details. But did I hear something about Pandemic Norway?
Norway? Oh, that's an interesting rumor. No, I don't think so. I can tell you that we have the Pandemic Survival World Championship every year. It's usually in October, November, December, sometime in Q4. And the location of the championship changes every year. So it was in Germany for the first year, and it was in Spain the second year. And we happened to coincidentally release Pandemic Iberia that year. This year, the championship will be in the Netherlands.
That's it.
And so keep your eyes peeled for something related to that.
All right. So there is more Pandemic non-legacy content coming our way.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Great. So thank you so much, Matt, for giving us your time, giving us your insights on kids' games and your list. I almost feel like there was an episode of South Park a long time ago where they had George Clooney guesting, and all he did was bark like a dog. You did more than bark like a dog, but it's like, we have Matt Leacock on, but we have to talk about something else, which thank you.
Yeah, sort of like, wait, don't tell me, doing Not My Job or something. Right? It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, that is going to be everything for this week's episode. Once again, if you are on Board Game Geek, make sure to hit up our guild at 1735. You can also find us on Facebook. Look for Board Gamers Anonymous, as well as Twitter at BGA Podcast. You will also be able to find all of our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Store, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts, as well as BoardGamersAnonymous.com. And if you skipped through the intro, make sure, keep it in mind, here in the next couple weeks, we're going to be switching the name over to Every Night is Game Night, which also means a couple new handles for you, which we'll announce for you next week on Twitter and all the other guys. So keep an ear out for that. And once again, thank you for listening. Until next time, we'll save you a seat at this table for one.
Later, everybody.